Well, good morning, everybody. This is the Irvine International Academy board meeting on December 9th, 10 a.m. or just slightly after 10 a.m. I want to welcome everybody who's participating. In a moment, we'll have a roll call and call our meeting to order in doing so. I do want to acknowledge our executive director here on a Saturday morning. Thank you, Dr. Bean. And also Delano Jones from our North Compass company that handles our back end and helps us with our budget. So to begin, let's do a roll call. I'll do it in order of our agenda here. First is myself, Doug Hewson, I'm present. Next to me, Brett Freeman.
Present. Thank you.
Online from 22737 Holyrood Avenue, Maple Ridge. Yeah, Sean.
Present.
Thank you, Miller. Not present today is David Sun. Then to my right, Felipe Delgado.
Present.
And Molly Chang.
Present.
Wonderful. We have quorum, and so the meeting's called to order. I'll invite someone to volunteer to lead a Pledge of Allegiance. Who'd like to do that? Okay, and here in the building, our flag is to the left.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Felipe. Looking at the the agenda, which is primarily the budget today. Any changes that board members want in the agenda as it's stated? I don't see any need particularly to change order on anything. Anyone need anything else change in budget? Our budget. I don't know why I have that in my mind. Agenda. Then I'll ask for a motion to approve the order of our agenda. Okay, and Molly has a second, and so going down our line for vote, Doug Hewson, I'm a yes, and Brett Freeman,
Yes.
and Miller, agenda.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, and Felipe,
Yes.
and Molly.
Yes.
Okay, we'll move ahead then. Pause for any public comments on non-agenda items. Mary Beth, anybody submit anything for public comments today?
No.
All right. Then we move to Roman numeral 3, and we have both the executive director report and fiscal update, and that'll be probably a little bit longer because we have some action to take on our budget revision. Dr. Bean, seems like we're just together a handful of weeks ago, but anything you would bring to our attention from executive director report?
Yeah, we were just here a couple weeks ago, and so not much has changed, except for we're at 372 enrollment. I think last time we talked, we were 370. So we picked up a couple of families, and a couple of families, one in 5th and one in 6th grade. So that's good. Trying to really build our future middle school. What else? Since then, through the generosity of the Larry and Helen Hogue Foundation, we were presented this check that we're going to present later on today that the board's going to approve. But I just want to say how meaningful that is. And I know that Brett worked very hard to procure this funding for us. And it's just amazing. It comes at a really good time, which leads me into my next thing, which is, we're launching kind of just a small end of year campaign that I've already sent a couple of letters home to families. We have winter performance on Wednesday, so I'll stand up here and try to encourage our parents to really support our school in that way, right? And so we put, in the program, it's a great way to put our QR code, and I'll just tell them why it'd be great for them to support us. So we'll do that in the winter performance, which, by the way, you're all invited to. I know a couple of you will be there at least because your children will be performing. But it's just a wonderful opportunity to showcase our music program. This program this year not only includes our students singing, but it will also have our orchestra that has been working hard, and some pianists that went through the audition. Mary Beth is Mary Beth's son is one of them, who will be playing a solo during the performances. So it's going to be a really great festive time.
And I would add there's food.
And there'll be food.
Some games for the kids. PTO is fine all that.
PTO has been very, very supportive this year. And so, yeah, they're going to be doing things in between the concerts or the performances, including a little fundraiser, which would be great. Speaking of PTO, they really were so generous in providing most of the support for our winter or our Christmas holiday party that we just had last Friday. It was a great time. I know Felipe was there and
The cake
PTO
was
was there.
good.
The cake was,
Good, excellent.
there was a cake?
Dessert.
Oh, the dessert was good. Yes. Yes, I had the cheesecake, so I didn't have the cake. I should have had the cake. So that was a good time. Our school's just, overall, it's just amazing. Great school. Really enjoy it. I know that the only really challenge is really getting us to a healthy financial status, and that's what mainly today is about, to really talk to you about the plan for that. But in a year and a half time, we're going to be out of the hole, especially with more people who can even donate to our school to even accelerate us getting that out of that hole, right? So we're going to be launching after this end of year thing. We're going to think about launching $1 million campaign. So we're going to work on that, Mary Beth and a few others, and want to get Felipe involved because PTO should be involved as well. But we're going to really try to raise, a lot of money for our school. I think that's really it. Not much has changed in 2 weeks. So yeah, I'm just proud of our team. I will say this: we had a school come and visit us last week, a dual immersion school from, I want to say Pomona or West Covina, one of those areas. Their staff came, visited, observed our Mandarin classes, had an opportunity to chat with me, and they were blown away. They've been in existence for 6 years, and they said what they saw here is light years ahead of where they're at. And they're very, very impressed. And they said the feeling that they got was that the staff really worked together and really supported one another, really planned with each other. And they said that's a breath of fresh air without throwing anybody under the bus. They just said that they hadn't seen anything like that, where the staff was just really humming and working together. And I've noticed that myself.
I would add.
Yeah.
In my work environment, in the engineering field, that's what we do. We
Yeah.
have to work as a team.
Yeah.
And in my experience, I see that a lot because that's where I work, right?
Right.
And we can see when there's dysfunction, things like that. When I come here and I walk through the schools, because I see that same effect
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
that I see at my work.
Oh, that's great.
So I have to tell you, I would agree. That does not surprise me that a different school probably doesn't have that leadership or the teamwork effort.
Mhm.
They notice it right away.
Yeah.
Because I notice it. And it's almost as if it's the same at my work. So
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Felipe, because it's true. There are multiple teams and systems on our school, but they all just cross discipline, right?
right.
And really support each other.
And I think when prospective parents come and
Yeah.
truly see what they're getting, that's what we're selling, right?
Yeah.
But as a business, right? That's what we're selling, that coordinated effort. They see it.
Yeah.
And that's what really will attract them to our school.
Absolutely.
All we got to do is get them in the door.
Yeah.
Right?
And you know what?
They see that.
Yeah, you're right. When parents see that, they get excited because they feel comfortable with their kids going to
What they're
school.
getting.
Right.
What they're getting.
Yeah.
Is the value they're getting.
Because if the adults can function well together, then they know their kids are well served. Speaking of parents, the only probably criticism from our Coffee the Principals, and boy, we do get a lot of parents at our Coffee the Principal this year, which is great. They have a lot of compliments, but the biggest criticism is our lunch, our meals, and some after school. So what we're doing is I'm gonna announce to our parents next copy of the principal that we're gonna open up a request for proposal and bring in a few vendors so that we can potentially bring in, you know, a better vendor for next year. We don't know. We'll just RFP and see who comes through that door and submits a proposal for us. But so that will be good news for parents to hear that at least we're going to be shopping around and seeing what's out there. Anything else, Mary Beth? Am I forgetting? No. All right. So with that, I'll turn it over to you guys, but I think things are going really well. I'm excited for the school.
Comments, questions? Yeah.
One, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Mary Beth and Dr. Bean, for being here. Delano as well. Thank you very much. And all board members. I saw from the minutes from the last meeting that we were targeting 377 by the end of December, but we thought we would get there. Do we think we'll get there on student count?
Well, Sai and Mary Beth seem to think so. I'll be cautious in just saying that usually around this time of the year, if a parent wants to make a transition to another school, they'll do it right after winter break. So we won't know until we come back from winter break if we're going to be at that 377. Sai and Mary Beth are pretty optimistic about it.
Yeah,
I'm more cautious about it.
probably 377 by January, maybe not.
That's what I thought
Yeah.
from the previous meeting. That's what I
Yeah.
recall. That we're looking more like
January.
When we come back from winter break. Yeah.
That's when,
Okay. And then the school that visited us is dual immersion, the language. What is the second language?
Mandarin.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how did that come about?
So Sandy is a part of the networking or a networking group of dual immersion schools around California. And this one heard about us through Sandy. So I had Sandy just invite them and they came in. We're going to take a visit to their school as well.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm wondering if we've identified other similar schools
Yes.
in the local area that maybe we could go visit.
Yep.
And encourage them just to see what they're doing, their model, and it's great to hear the feedback.
Yeah. And speaking of, Sandy and I are going to be speaking at one of the dual immersion or bilingual conferences on the topic of Mandarin language development time, which is actually unique for most dual immersion schools. Most dual immersion schools have their main program, but they don't have a time where you have small group instruction to help develop Mandarin. And so that's MLD time. So we're going to talk about that in the conference. So that'll be pretty cool.
Okay. And then the last point is on the RFP related to the food.
Yeah.
Can you describe that process?
Yes. So the process is we notify vendors through, media outlets, publicize it, and then they have a certain amount of days to send us a proposal. And then we vet the proposals that come in. It will include food testing, which will include parents and staff members to test the food. I actually even want to have students test the food as well. Our student council, mainly 5th, 6th graders, actually approached me and had a 20-minute interview with me about our food, and they want to send out a survey to the students. And I heard from them loud and clear that they're not happy with the meals. So they're going to be involved with the test taking. And then, of course, from there, we just narrow it down and then we get into a new contract.
So, I guess I'm wondering, is there a way to identify just 5 companies? I don't even know how many companies there are that can do it and just proactively do it. And then, the reason I ask is because sometimes, they'll provide a proposal. I don't know, are there 2 rounds? Is it 1 round?
No, so we hire School Food Solutions. It handles all of these types of things as a consultant. And so they run the whole process for us. They already have relationships with all these food vendors because they obviously work with other schools. And so they reach out to these food vendors directly and say, look, we have an RFP, so come and come, submit a request, first proposal.
Is there any reason why you might not be personally involved in the final selection process, let's say in the RFP or the negotiation? The reason I ask is because, you know, if it's a third party, you know, they're gonna,
No. We are the final. We make all the decisions.
yeah.
The
But the price-
independent, yeah.
The price negotiation.
I mean, mainly school food solutions handle the price negotiation because it's pretty strict. Because the federal government will only give you $4.50 per meal, so therefore negotiation, any lunches have to be below that. And so they handle that because they're experts with that. We'll be part of the negotiation, but I wouldn't know how to negotiate like the best food prices compared to these other vendors. That's why I rely on the consultant.
Yeah, so I guess that's part of it. So all of the proposals that we receive typically, you
Yeah.
know, they meet the federal guidelines.
Absolutely, all of them have to.
Okay.
Yes.
So then, because I know that my understanding or my recollection is we chose Red Foods because of budgetary constraints and they had the most competitive proposal. Is that not correct?
So the first year that I was, let's back up. Last year was the first year that we had any food services. The reason why we chose Rev Foods is because they helped us last year when no other vendors could service us last minute. Remember, we went from year one, no lunch program, to year two, quickly getting in a lunch program. And Rev Foods, since they supported us in year one a little bit, they were quick to respond and say, we can help you get off the ground and running. And that's what they did in year two. So then when we did an RFP last year, there were only 2 vendors that submitted a proposal, and Rev Foods was one of them. So at the end of the day, when we went through all of that process, it was in good faith. It was actually a good idea to bring Rev Foods because they had already built a system in place, and they had told us that they merged with another larger vendor, which they said would offer more selections of food and their quality would be higher. Well, we saw the more selections of food this year. Quality, we're just not happy with still. So it doesn't hurt us to open up the process again, since it's only an annual contract. So we're gonna open up the process again, this time, be more explicit about finding more food vendors other than the 2 that submitted a proposal.
So I guess, yeah, I'd be curious to find out why only 2 responded.
Well, because the other one, the Fresh Health is called Healthy Fresh, Fresh Health.
Fresh start.
Fresh Start, thank you. Fresh Start seems to be pretty popular among parents at other schools like the new ICIA, OCCA, other schools in Orange County. And last year they, for some reason, didn't submit a proposal because they said we are out of the route or something like that. We were out of their route and it would just take too much. But now that they're servicing another Irvine school at OCCA this year, they ought to be able to fit us in that route. So we're going to strongly encourage that vendor to participate.
So we'll have some involvement in invitations, I guess, because you mentioned you send it out to media or release. So it seems
Well, you
like
have to do that. Yeah, you have to
it's
do that.
public, right? So the public tender.
You have to do public tender according to the federal and state requirements. But we already know, we're already honing in on those vendors and reaching out to those vendors who will service us. Yes. So Fresh Start is one of them for sure. And so is Rev Foods. They're going to have to submit another proposal and really explain to us why, you know, the quality of food is not as good as we would like it to be.
Be sure to include a board member in the taste test.
Sure. We'd like to be a part of that. And you know, when we get down,
Is that me again?
oh, Felipe enjoys the food we have. So
A lot.
yes.
You know, I do spend a lot of time, at the
Supporting.
volunteer at the lunch stack there.
Yep.
And I tell you, it's kind of, it just depends, you know, yesterday they had the pizza and there was no leftover pizza.
Kids loved it.
They went fast, kids were asking for it, right? And that would be the first and second, third graders, they were doing that, right? But when I asked Raymond, who's 6th grade, he's like, he gave me that. It was so I think it changed the variety or the taste changes for the grade too. So it's difficult.
It
It's
is.
difficult to
But I also think presentation makes a lot of difference,
Mhm.
right, in perception. So Fresh Start, their presentation is much,
I think that has a big.
Better. It really does.
Yeah,
So.
makes it a appetizing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, but yes, well, if you would like, toward the selection process, we can certainly involve a board member to not only in the taste testing, but just to vet some of these vendors. But I'll be the first to tell you that, I don't know exactly what to look for when you look for food vendors that meet the federal requirements. That's why we hire School Food Solutions to do that.
Other topics or comments, board members on executive director report? We're going to have opportunity at the end, of course, for more interaction as well. Delana Jones is with us for a fiscal update, and that's part of the reason we're here. We're at the time of the year when we do our mid-year budget submission to the county. Delana, a lot on this. I like how the agenda is laid out. There's October financials. Reviewing those, October financials look a lot like September financials. It's early in the year. There's not much happens. There's lots of expense, but not much revenue. So my recommendation, but I'm flexible, is this. Perhaps we look at it and just invite any questions on October financials and then move pretty quickly to our first interim report, which would be more important, and what we need to approve for the county as well, along with an explanation of the two narratives. Why do we write a narrative about where we're at fiscally this year and our plan? Because that's pretty common with charters to submit to their, in this case, Orange County Board. So yeah, how do you like that? Just we touch on October briefly and then move on to the bigger portion. You two thumbs up on that?
Yes. Good morning, folks. And Doug, yes, we could do that. Let's sort of make this a little bit easier for everyone. I think this will make it flow a little bit quicker. Pay close attention to the October financials, the year-to-date information, because that's really what the interim report is based upon. So when we get to that document, we can sort of bypass most of the moving parts there because we will have already touched on it during the financial presentation. And then the next key piece would be the budget, the revised budget, because that really ties into the fiscal stabilization plan that the board we're asking the board to approve this morning. So if we sort of go that route, I think we'll get there much quicker. I'll just give you the highlights from the October financials, but it encompasses the interim information anyway. So that's, so we'll kill two birds with one stone there. Mary Beth, if you can allow me to, never mind, I can share. All righty, folks. Everyone can see can you all see this now, the October financials, just to confirm?
Yeah.
Awesome, perfect. All righty. So let's dive right in really quickly. Revenues for October. We're looking just specifically at the month of October. And again, I'm just going to move through this relatively quickly so we can see most of the year-to-date things. So in October, we received $421,252 in revenues. You can see the breakdown here, $221 from LCFF, state funds, your ELOP, which is the after school program, and special ed, and then some donations and interest there. Again, you can see here just that breakdown overall. This is now looking at year-to-date totals, year-to-date revenues of $999,000, sort of reflected there in this pie chart. Remaining budget in terms of revenues, and again, this is on the original budget, because since we're not approving the budget until after this conversation, I realistically should not put it in this conversation here, right? So this is the 3.8 million that's remaining out of in terms of revenues. And again, this is on the original budget approved back in June of 4.8 million. Prior year comparison, just look at where we were a year ago at the same time. You can sort of see here pretty much the same in terms of LCFF revenues. Huge change here, obviously, in some of your federal dollars, most of this NSLP lunch revenues. You can see the state here, again, looking at last year compared to this year, 277 ELOP and SPED, which is, again, the after-school program and your special education dollars. Local here, combination of donations, interest, things like that. Expenses through October, for October, 478,000. You can see the breakdown here in terms of salaries and benefits, 333,000. We had a credit in this curriculum area here, so that's why you're seeing this credit of 5,000 there. Operating expenses of 101,000, and then other outgo, which is most of this is related to the receivable sales to charter schools capital. So that's about 50,000 that you're seeing there, and sort of pay close attention to this number when we look at the year-to-date piece. All right, revenues here. And again, you can see, expenses here through October, 1.9 million. As of 10/31, about 39% of our projected expenditures have come to fruition. About 50% of our budgeted expenses for books and supplies. And again, this is one area where we know that there's always that uptick in the first half of the year, and that flattens out, tapers off as we go forward. Operational expenditures, 48.58% of our total budgeted expenditures for that line item. And again, you can sort of see here where we are in terms of just the major cost factors, 51% for salaries and benefits and things like that. And it's about par for the course. That's always the biggest portion of your expenditures. And then obviously here you can see operational costs at 25%, our books curriculum, 15% of our total expenditures for the year. Snapshot back at last year. So if you were to sort of go back in time, you can sort of see where we are here. The red columns indicate 2022. Orange columns represent 2023, same period in time, October 22 versus October 23. So these are all year to date. And you can see there the uptick in salaries. Obviously, salary increases from one year to the next per the salary schedule. Same here with classified salaries as well. And again, this is just more or less, and if I were to summarize this, there's always this uptick year over year because there's been growth from 22 to 23 in terms of more students, et cetera, right? From 211 to now 377. So we expect to see these increased costs across the board. So we're looking at our budget comparison here. And again, as I mentioned, 999,000 in revenues, 1.9 million in expenditures. You can see again, just a percent change here in terms of what we've received versus budget across the board. As I mentioned, roughly 39% of our budgeted expenditures year to date, but here look, less than 20% in terms of overall revenues received. Thus, you would expect to see a deficit here, 933,000. Quickly looking at the balance sheet, and I'll trim this now next time so it's not so busy here. You can see where we were this year in terms of our total assets, 5.17. You can see our cash compared to last year and the variances there, and a change overall. More assets this year compared to last year, but then obviously more liabilities this year compared to last year as well. One of the big pieces here is this receivable sales. You can see where we are through October 1.3 million in terms of just keeping ourselves afloat, right? And Dr. Bean mentioned earlier in his presentation about the need to sort of generate revenues beyond what we're getting from the state. And that's mentioned also in my fiscal stabilization plan about how do we attack this fund balance to bring it back to positive in the coming years. And when I do that presentation, you will be able to see where we're projecting that will be, or when we're projecting that will be. Looking here at our cash position last year versus this year, 240 in the treasury, 199 in the cafe account. Total cash at the end of October, 439,000. Last year we were at 419, so roughly right about the same. But again, keep in mind we have more expenditures this year, so that really impacts, you know, our ability to do things, and we must be strategic about that in terms of, you know, making sure that we have enough resources to meet current month and the outgoing month expenditures. Days cash on hand is roughly calculated about 10 days. And again, this is about, you know, month over month in terms of where we are. Questions on, and I sort of went through that really quickly because we have a lot to cover. I'll take any questions on the October financials that you may have.
So one, any surprises from your perspective?
No surprises. If I were to give my opinion on this, I would say that, you know, and I sort of go back to this month over month, it's expected for us to be in this position because, again, there aren't any factors that have changed in our favors, right? It's not like, you know, we're getting more revenues, Brent, or, you know, we've seen a huge reduction in expenditures, right? So most everything is on course as we've planned it. And again, you know, one of the things that I say is, you know, if Dr. Bean and I and team manage this budget that I'm going to ask you guys to approve, we will see where this thing will turn itself around, or where, you know, the school will turn itself around in terms of getting back to positive, right? But overall, no surprises there. This is where I expected us to be, you know, just based historically on things that have transpired last year.
Hey, Delano, I just got
Yes, sir.
a quick point. I think last month for September budget, cash on hand was also 10, right? I seem to recall that. So we're just like moving from September to October. It's the same.
Yeah, it's roughly about the same, because again, you know, in terms of revenue received and those expenditures are pretty much the same month over month there. I think last month, you know, I don't know if we were closer to 8 to 10 days or whatever it was. I can't remember exactly what that number was. But yeah, it's within that ballpark in terms of about 10 days of cash on hand. But remember, you know, we're strategic about how we are paying our bills and things like that. So, you know, we prioritize making sure that payroll is most important, taking care of our staff. Then obviously we take care of our vendors and things like that in that second layer.
Thank you.
All righty. That takes care of the, I'm sort of looking at the fiscal update. Let's run through the budget and the interims as just a conversation. So that way, when we get to the action items, you guys can just approve, you know, but I think it would be best if we just had a conversation regarding these things now. All right, my good folks, can you guys see the budget? Or are you still looking at the financial yeah, let's do that. All righty. All right, so we're looking at the budget, yes?
Yep.
All right, awesome, perfect. Would it help if I made it a little bit bigger? How about that? All right, awesome. All righty. So I give you guys a little bit of context here. So I have last year's actuals on the far left column. I've dropped in our actuals through October of this year, which is really the interim report in and of itself, right? Which I just went over in the October financials. This is the original budget. And so this is what was approved by this board back in June of last year, if you guys, or this year, if you guys remember, right? And so we were looking there projected of 377 students, 95% ADA attendance rate, and then 358.12 in terms of overall ADA, right? What you see here now are just, and I dropped in here now the revised budget based on our projections and our forecasts going forward. I did revise the enrollment to capture exactly the true enrollment as we know to be as of believe the end of November. 96% attendance rate, which is 1% more than than the original budget. And here just less, one less ADA overall that we've lost. You can see here total revenues, and again, your LCFF revenues here, we were at 4,055,000, we're now 4,082,000. Federal revenues, you can see here, 176,000. We were at 280 last time. What has changed is the SPED, the federal NSLP, and your revised title PCSGP grant. State revenues here went from 555,000 to 1,095,000. Most of that we recognize your NSLP and the art and music block grant and the instructional material emergency learning instructional materials emergency block grant. So that's what you see here in this 494. So we went from 552 to 1,095,000. Dropped in here local revenues went from 157 to 242. You can see here, most of that was this uptick in the foundation grants, things like that, PTO, interest, fundraising of all sorts built into here. Overall, revenues went up 500,000. Subsequently to that, on the expense side, you can see here where teacher salaries went up. Classified salaries went down by 16,000. Benefits went down as well. Giving you highlights here, you can see the downward trend. And again, all of this is addressed in the fiscal stabilization plan in terms of freezing some expenditures, which we know we're not going to come back up in the school year. We did quite a bit of that on certain curriculum items that we knew were just one-time expenditures, and we weren't going to see any more of that for the rest of the year.
Hey, Delano, as you're going, could we hit pause just on a second and just see if anybody has any questions on the revenue side? Yeah.
What month do you think, if there will be a month, that we won't need to sell our receivables?
We'll get to that in just a second there, Brent. Yeah, it's coming. It won't be, well, I won't answer that until we get there.
Okay.
And I'll tell you. Again, you can see here, services and other operating expenditures went from 1,010,000 to 1.4 million. Again, we have more uptick here. The rubber meets the road in terms of that borrowing, and I'm glad you mentioned that. So you can see here, this is what, pay attention to this. So for that 1.3 million that we've already borrowed this year, it's cost us 164,000 in fees and interest charges, right? For that, right? I'm projecting that we're going to wind up in terms of fees and interest on what we borrow about 250,000. And as I mentioned before, this is a bridge that we need to get us to where we need to go. It's a necessary bridge, but an evil bridge in a sense, right? It's a necessary evil in that sense, and so it's expensive, right? Any type of hard money borrowing is going to be expensive, and especially now with with rates where they are, it's even more so than it has in the past. Total operating expenditures, and again, it went up by about 500,000. You can see our total expenses went up, but the downward tick in terms of net income was just under $10,000 here. Over 10,000, I should say. We went from 183 to 172, but I'm much comfortable with the forecast on the expenditures now, having so much more information through October. I'm much more comfortable in terms of what we've projected for salaries, benefits, program costs, operational costs, and things like that. So I'm pretty confident in this budget, in this revised budget that we're asking the board to approve for the interim report. To answer your question, Brent, it won't be until when we get past April, going into the end of the year, that we'll see that switch over in borrowing, right? Because right now, basically, we've mortgaged the future in terms. I shouldn't say the mortgage the future, but we've borrowed into the future quite a bit to bridge us until we get to say P1, where we'll see that true up in terms of revenues. But we owe most of that to charter schools capital. So then the cycle still has to continue until we get through P2, which is April / going into the end of the year. So we'll be into next year really and truly before you see that borrowing go away, just because we're going to need the resources again to sort of get us through the first half of next year because of the timing of revenues. But we'll be getting more revenues at the start of the fiscal year because it will be paid on this number up here now, right? It will be paid on this 357, not the 211 or whatever it is we're being currently paid on right now. So that will be the difference in terms of when we come out of the fog or when we come out of the storm. Will be into next year, fall / winter, so to speak. And I'll show you that on the cash flow when we take a look at the interims. I'll just highlight some of that a little bit. So that is the budget, and I'll take questions specifically if there are any. I believe you guys have this information in front of you. So if there are any specific questions there, I'll be happy to entertain them.
Delano, just observation, and then you can either correct me or affirm me on it. It appears to me that the underlying assumptions and the projections that are based on those are accurate and slightly conservative. We start with our actual, we know how many kids are in attendance here, and we're forecasting 96% will actually get credit for, and we're using the actual number, even though we think we might be 5 higher. The revenue that is available from federal programs, and it looks like you've identified it. The board approved our policies last month. So it looks like you're getting every dollar possible, for the school. But how do you feel about it? Would you characterize the budget as accurate and slightly conservative, or would you put it somewhere else and say, hey, this is just make-believe and pie in the sky?
No, I'm confident in this budget in terms of us being able. We spend quite a bit of time reforecasting salaries, benefits, and a lot of those day-to-day expenditures or month-to-month expenditures. So I'm confident in those numbers. To your point about being conservative on the enrollment side / ADA, I used the most current known information, which was 372, the attendance rate of 96%. There's certain factors. So keep in mind, folks, that number that we're talking about, the 358 ADA, that's a number we're saying, hey, at P2, which is when that number is officially official, that's we want that to be at minimum that number, right? And then anything else higher than that. So even if you were to get students, to Dr. Bean's point, after the winter break, you're only going to, even, if you get 10 students, you won't be able to recognize the ADA at that rate. It's prorated. So you may be an uptick of, say, 3 or 4 more ADA, but that's 20, that's 35, 40,000 in additional revenues that we'll get as a result. But to your question, Doug, yes, it's conservative on that end of it. We have, with all diligence and with Dr. Bean's blessings, we've tightened the belt and the screws a little bit on certain expenditures, meaning that when we're monitoring this month over month going forward here, we're going to be able to quickly see, any line item that's either unbudgeted or is trending towards excess in terms of overage, right? So I'm confident in that and the process that we've developed to stay within this, because it's important and imperative that for the fiscal health of the school, that we realize that net income this year. We can't have another year of deficit spending that we've had last year, right? So to your point, yes, I'm confident in this. I feel good about this budget. The one thing that I would like to express is that, we could always use more revenues, right? From whatever sources that may be. The beauty of this school is that it has the opportunity to engage more beyond what a traditional public school can do. And that's something I talked to Dr. Bean about in one of our meetings, was the ability of the PTO to fundraise. We're looking forward to having a massive gala this year, better than last year, right? And every year making it better, right? And things like that to generate more revenues, because as we know, the state, we're limited in what we're going to get from the state and federal government, right? But we have flexibility to get more from our friends, our partners, and supporters of Irvine International.
Thank you. I know you've got more to go. Any other observations at this point? Yeah.
Of the interest in expansionary efforts, I think predominantly those costs are probably built into legal services. Is that right?
That's correct.
So do you know roughly what that amount looks like of the legal service that's dedicated to, that might be offset by anything that the board votes on today in terms of approving a donation?
No, not, I mean, we've been averaging around 8,000 to 10,000 of legal fees a month the last year and a half.
Yeah.
That has slowed down because we don't have any existing, or you're right, unforeseen. They have finished, well, when we finish our part of the countywide charter, then of course the clock will start ticking for their support. And when we go to the board in February, but no, I couldn't give you an exact number how much that is going to cost.
Yeah. Is that built in? Is there any built into that 80 that I see here?
Yeah, all of that 80 for legal, all that's built into that.
Yeah. Covers activities for this year.
Yeah, that will cover this. And Delano had it even higher, and I said, no, I don't think we're gonna need that much.
Yeah.
We needed it last year, of course, with a couple of cases, but we don't have those cases this year. I will say with Delano that the money we spent August, September, October, a lot of that was curriculum, and we don't really have much more curriculum to purchase in November, December, and beyond. There is no more curriculum purchase. We purchased in the beginning of the year, and so our teachers know. Yes, there may be, when we get new students, we have to pay $40 here or there for new textbooks, but overall, we don't see a large expenditure like we do in the beginning of the year, where we pay $30,000 for a replenishing math program or $20,000 for Mandarin program. So that you should see, that should be a noticeable change where income will catch up, and because expenditures are going to go down. One thing we're looking at in the future, and we're going to get into the recovery plan, but what we're going to look at is, because salaries and benefits is our main cost, we may want to consider as a board freezing it for at least a year, just to give us a breathing room. right? So freezing any increase, so we don't go into the next column in our step and column salary schedule. We can do that as a board, decide you want to freeze it for a year or two, just to give us breathing room to catch up. So that's one thing you want to think about. And then Delano is going to look into, and Delano, you know, when I sat down with Meredith, our unduplicated count is higher than it was last year. We're over 40% now, which should translate to more LCFF revenue. And
yes, small increase.
Small increase, but we should also look into potentially Title III. You know, that could be some more money because our EL population is actually very high. We have over 30% EL population now, which was more than last year. So those are some things, but curriculum has been frozen. I would recommend later on freezing the salary schedule and then just continue our path. And then Delano is going to present what is that plan and when do we get out of the hole. So I'll turn it over to you, Delano.
One more question, sorry. Are there any other alternatives to charter school capital?
Not really.
For so
They-
long.
yeah. I mean, there are some options, but I think what you would find, Brent, is that it would be similar to this you know, this type of situation, meaning that those hard money lenders
Yeah, I was
want,
just wondering,
you know.
you know, if you introduce competition,
Yeah, so there is competition, but the rates, it's almost like if you go to buy a car, but you're looking for the, you know, let's just say I don't know, pick a car, right? You go say, you know, one dealer to the next, you know, there won't be much variation in the, you know, variance in the price, at least in the sticker price, and so there's another entity called CAM. And their rates are, you know, because they use the same factoring type of model, you know.
Possibly one avenue. We explored it a little while, but it's probably worth, as a board member inquiring again. Our authorizer at one time had some interest, or at least was open to the idea when they're cash rich to make money available to entities like a charter school at a very, very low interest rate. So I'll revisit that and just see what the status is, because there was desire from that group, but that would certainly be much better to almost just keep it in the family, you know, one entity that's authorized by the other. So, but yeah, it's the one piece that we need right now, but we pay dearly for it. And if we solve that, the benefit's significant. I think the only other alternative sometimes is going after tax exempt bonds for schools and doing a bond issue. It's honestly not that difficult, but usually you do that when you're going to build something. You do multi-year borrowing through a bond issue, because you can get down, you know, 4% borrowing even in today's climate. So,
have we ever quoted this CAM group?
Have we ever who?
Quoted? Have we ever gotten a rate from this group that you mentioned, the CAM group?
No, I haven't, just because I know that Charter Schools Capital is a better partner, just based on my experience. But you know, we can always reach out to them to get comparisons.
I think it's worth it. I mean, even if we decide to keep charter, at least we say, well, we have another rate that's better. Can you meet it? You know, because
Right.
this is expensive for us, $250K this year. So obviously it's something that we should be, in my opinion, I think, putting weight into.
we
Yeah,
certainly hear a report
I'll look into it.
competitive. We've got a good partner. We're not saying they're not a good partner. They're highly flexible. They don't penalize us when we pay back quickly. We try to keep our cash on hand low so that we can only borrow what we need. So it's always nice to have a good partner like that. But as Brett said, periodically, sometimes on an annual basis, that checkpoint with the competitor is good. And if you can bring us back any analysis on that, that'd be fantastic for us.
No, Brett.
Yeah, I can certainly look into it. And
You know,
see
I would
what.
add that, you know, even a fractional difference, you know, it's going to save us money to buy something. Right? You know what I mean?
It's our attitude here.
Even
Yeah, we've
a
all been very,
fractional
very frugal.
difference
I'm for it. Because we know we're good for it, right? We already have a good story to tell. We just did, we need the bridge.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. And one thing, you know, I sort of leave you guys with this piece of it, which is, you know, the community, right? You know, our stakeholders, right? I think this is always a good opportunity for that call for assistance in terms of, you know, making sure that we're tapping into our community resources, right? Because, you know, there won't be any interest on those contributions, right? You know, we don't have any fees and things like that. So the more that we can get in terms of our resources from our community partners, stakeholders, and things like that. That always helps more so than, you know, the borrowing. Because trust me when I say, the sooner we can get out of the borrowing, the better off we will be. But for now, this is you know, it's such a necessary evil. And I can't overstate that enough.
Well, thank you. Delano, are you going to take us through our stabilization
Yes.
plan report?
All right, so we've already talked about the October financials and the year-to-date financials. We somewhat covered the interim report in a sense. In doing that, we've looked at the budget, right? So let's sort of walk backwards to how we got here in terms of, and let me share that really quickly, and the reason why we're doing this. And thank you guys all for being here on a Saturday morning. I know this is not what you guys signed up for, in a sense, but you know, like I want to make sure that that's pointed out, because it's so important for us to have board participation in these things. All right, let's see if I got this up. Yep, perfect. All righty. So, the reason we're here, one of the things that came up, and if you guys recall, at the end of last year, the school had deficit spending of just about $1 million, right? The prior year, because you know that was year one, you know, going into year two with and everyone that's on on this board now was around at some point during that time, during some of those crises, right? Those crisis led us to where we are today, right? Your authorizer looking at this, you know, your unaudited actuals and just your overall fiscal performance from one year over the next, it looked at the trajectory of the school and said, hey, look, you know, there are some concerns about the deficit spending, the fund balances in a deficit. We really would like to have something that shows that how we're going to stabilize this, and then how we're going to level this off and make sure that we're on the path to solvency again, right? So I went back and I told a little bit of the story of how we got here. And these are just, again, my summation and my opinion of how we got here, in that sense, right? I won't read this, I'm sure, because you guys have probably read through most of this, and I just want to hit the highlights in terms of the plan, right? One of the things that I talked about, and again, just before I even dive into it, you can see here, you know, 210 students in that year. We wound up with a deficit of $1,022,000, right? So we're carrying that as part of the fund balance coming into 22-23, right? So we have to have a way to be able to overcome that and get back to positive. And that's the biggest concern for your authorizers. Hey, when do you get back to positive, and how soon can you stabilize this school so there isn't a concern? One of the things is just a comprehensive budget review, right? This is something that Dr. Bean and I have been doing for a while. You know, we're looking at the budget, we're analyzing it, we're making sure that we're not spending over and beyond where we should, right? Looking at some of our financial trends, which is why we switched up the monthly reports to sort of give you some year over year analysis, right? Looking at last year compared to this year, same point in time. So that way everyone then can see, hey, if there's a huge change up or down, you know, we can talk about it and address, hey, did something happen this year versus last year? Because normally in the course of a school year, there, and I'm sure the staff can attest to this. It's pretty routine, right? It's the same thing, right? Revenues are going to come in. We pretty much know the schedule for that. You're going to have your expenses, right? Nothing really changes in that way if things are on track, right? But immediately when something goes off track, then we'll start to see these huge fluctuations up and down in terms of events reflected in your income statement, on your balance sheet, etc. We need to we need more revenue diversification. And one of the things that I touched on earlier was the need to partner up and pursue outside grants. Look at partnerships with local entities around your community, your parent groups, your stakeholders, in a sense, right? In terms of being able to bring in more revenues to the school. Obviously, this is one of the key areas: student retention and recruitment, right? Because this is the catalyst, really and truly, for how we get out of this, right? We need more students, right? We need more revenues generated by those students to be able to do that. And Dr. Bean does have a plan in place. There is room in the budget for marketing materials for that purpose. I believe it's in the 5800 series that you'll see there, student recruitment, and there's a line item in the budget for that, right? And just overall operation efficiency, right? And I sort of read through some of this here. The charter will conduct a cost-effective analysis of current operations. Salaries and benefit schedules will be suspended at current year levels, which is what Dr. Bean mentioned, and will be revisited in future years as the fiscal position improves. Additionally, exploring bulk purchasing and considering shared services with other schools. There are a number of charters, usually when they're need to share staff, right? As an example, some of your special ed costs you may have, and I understand this year you have a few more additional expenditures related to special ed. Some of your outside vendors for those things, usually if, a school will say, well, I only need that service for 2 days a week and you need it for 3 days a week, usually you can get a partnership with that, and you can, one school employs the person and then the other school just sort of do a reimbursement to that school. I've seen it work in the past, and it is beneficial, but again, you have to look for dancing partners who are aligned with your needs as well. One of the things, as I mentioned, going back to this, and Dr. Bean already touched on it, this is a huge part of the conversation that needs to be had in terms of, making sure that the trajectory on salaries and benefits are not such that it's not sustainable, right? Because I believe the school is currently married to a salary schedule that reflects Irvine School District. But in the other sense of that, that may not be where Irvine Academy is in terms of affordability, right? Can we afford to pay at those levels, right? That's the overarching question when it comes to that. Financial reporting and transparency. And again, part of our diligence here with the board is to make sure that the board sees on a monthly basis the financials. They're providing input, feedback, not just to us, but also to the stakeholders as well, right? And so that's as part of the stabilization plan, is just making sure that we're continuing to do these things on a monthly and annual basis. I spoke about the need to establish and maintain reserves. We can't do that yet because we have to get ourselves out of this hole that we're in. But once we're out of that, then we can start to implement some strategies in terms of a year over year. How can we build reserves, right? What can we designate? And the board does have that flexibility to be able to designate a portion of net income year over year for economic uncertainties, for future, strategic planning, things like that. It could be even for, hey, we're designating a portion of our revenues every year for salaries and benefits, right? Things like that. So that way, that amount is what's increased or applied to salary increases and benefit increases, and not just being married to the salary schedule. So there are a number of things that we can do differently, but some of those will require some policy change, obviously, because if you have a salary schedule, you would have to certainly undo it, take some action to freeze it, things like that. And again, grants and fundraising, right? I cannot pound on this enough in terms of the need for us to be able, because this is at our disposal, right? This is not this here is an area where, most public schools don't have that flexibility, but a charter school, we do, right? And so I think, a school that is unique in this way, does have some flexibility and maybe some opportunities to be able to seek out additional funding sources beyond what the state is providing. Strategic planning, right? And again, this is one of the things that sort of falls to the board in terms of, looking at, where are we today and where will we be in 5 years, right? If we were goal setting and things like that, we'd want to look at, the size of the school. Where are we going to be in terms of enrollment, right? What is our population in terms of staff and leadership? What does that look like? What do we want the school to look like in terms of size, structure? Are we expanding, or are we staying, within our current facility, things like that? Because all of those things ultimately impacts the bottom line. Training and development of staff. One of the things that I committed to Dr. Bean was that, hey, look, we're going to, not just get him or keep him up to speed, but we also want to make sure that his team around him also understand funding, expenditures, and all of these things, because ultimately when they come to him for approval or blessings on certain things, we want them to understand when he says not now or no, it's not forever, right? And not only that, but also improve their knowledge base in terms of how funding comes into the school, the impact of that funding, where that funding goes, and how that impacts what happens in the classroom on a day-to-day basis. Most importantly here, open communication, right? I think our regular board meetings serves that purpose. The check-in meetings with Dr. Bean and his team serves that purpose as well. And just making sure that that's reflective in our processes in terms of what we do with that communication afterwards. And a contingency plan. What happens if, right? What happens if we run out of money? What happens if we don't get the enrollment that we desire, right? What happens if an unforeseen event impacts the school like it did in the last year or so, right? In the past 2 years, right? And those are things that I want the board, or I challenge the board to think about in terms of, hey, if what happens when unplanned events come about? How do we address them? Things like that. And one of the things, or two of the things that I mentioned here was, the need to establish contingency plans for potential fiscal crisis, outlining responses to various scenarios, right? So, if we were to, when I played sports, one of the things that the coaches would always say, hey, what are you going to do if the ball is hit to you? What are you going to do if the ball is passed to you or thrown to you, right? Because if you don't have a plan, or know at least to some degree what happens if something comes my way, then how will you be prepared to deal with it, right? And I'll just sort of leave you with this. This fiscal stabilization plan is a living document, right? Meaning that we can change it at any point in time, right? And it is subject to review and adjustment based on the evolving needs and circumstances of the school. Successful implementation will require collaboration, communication, and sustained commitment from all stakeholders involved, not just this board, but the administration, your staff, and all of your partners as well, inclusive of myself. That is the fiscal stabilization plan in a nutshell. I'll be happy to have further conversations or take questions on this.
Thanks, Delana. Delana, where does this go from here? Who receives it?
Yes. So this will go back to the authorizer. They will take this and review it, compare it to the interim budget, which is what I'm going to show you in just a second, because that was part of the fiscal stabilization requirement, is that we submit a budget for the out years, which shows when we will get back to solvency. right? Because
Let's
ultimately,
see if there's any other comments. I just have one, just tiny thing, just a little formatting at the bottom. A
Mhm.
couple of numbers crept in where there would normally be just indentations. That's just small. Look at number 9 and 11 and 12. But,
okay, formatting wise, I
yeah,
got
just
you.
tiny stuff.
Yep. Okay, awesome. I'll fix that.
Anything else? Yeah, please.
So just to clarify, the authorizer asked for this, or this is something we're proactively doing?
No, they asked for this. So Brent, I will say late September, October. Matter of fact, it was more in October after they received the unaudited actuals, which is that summary of year end 22-23. Normally, and they will do this for any school that shows, a 2-year or year or two of deficit spending. And when they look at the fund balance, they can clearly see that, hey, look, this thing is going left when it should be going right. And so they just want to make sure, as part of their diligence, that they require certain documents from us showing that we're addressing that issue, that the board is aware of that issue, which is why this needs board approval. In a nutshell, right? That, the board is in the driver's seat, so to speak, when it comes to making sure that, the school is fiscally solvent.
Okay, so who actually owns this document?
It's our document that we're sharing with the authorizer. They're requesting us to file one with them.
So I may propose something to Dr. Payne here. I think this is excellent. It's great that the authorizer is asking for it. I actually think that somebody within the school should own it.
Well, of course I am. I mean, if that's the question, of course, as
so-
executive director.
Yeah, I think we may want to add, even if it's our own, if the authorizer doesn't require it, we know it, that the ED, your principal, the ED, is going to own this document. I actually think there are things we should be converting from this into an action plan and have who is the champion and when is it going to be due. And some of these things are kind of set. You set it up one time and then you just update it along the way. Other things we should be doing every year anyways, or multiple times during the year, and we should have dates. The things we're already doing, right, that are from this, but this is great. And I think that we should use it as, not just a living document, but actually a document that we're working off of. Because we have some plan associated with it, because it's great. Even if during our most stellar years of financial surplus, that we have a financial plan associated with that. We have activities that we're monitoring constantly to make sure that we are managing it in a way that's sustainable. And any changes that we make to this document, I think, should be noted, and who made the change, the date, who made it, because this is something that, we can really build off of. I think this is great, even if it comes on the heels of, because we're in the hole.
I appreciate the comment. In fact, I was talking to Delano about that when we were going over this, that once we submit this, the next step is to actually create this like a project timeline, assign people. Of course, I am the ultimate, I take ultimate responsibility of the plan, which also leads into, this idea that the executive director needs to do that work. And part of the work that I do, of course, here is the principal role as well. And so the grant that the Larry and Helen Ho Foundation is giving will help hopefully be able to support me in doing the executive directorship role more with supports that I need so that the school can continue to operate day to day. And as Mary Beth can attest to you, that I actually have to work from home on Fridays to do a lot of my executive director work, because when I'm here, I'm just the principal. I just focus on a lot of the principal stuff because it's just nonstop meetings and troubleshooting issues. But to your point, yes, the executive director, that's their main responsibility, is all of these things. And I would like to do that. I'd like to fundraise more. I'd like to get out there and meet people and bring in funders. Just feel like I haven't been effective doing that as being a principal as well. So
One metaphor for that: some days you work in the business,
other days working on the business.
Right.
And you gotta get away on Friday to work on it.
Right.
I could see this is excellent for what reporting we need to do anyway. I think it's great. A couple little, obviously little typos, but I think the fiscal stabilization plan could easily become our ongoing fiscal strategic plan. We have it. It exists in some ways, but this is that financial piece that causes all the plans that you've already articulated. You know where we're going, and it's a pretty exciting future. This is the piece that undergirds it, and I could see us adding some support to you.
Yeah, so my question to the board is how do we do that? How do we, to really truly implement this plan, you need a full-time executive director, which I am. How do we support the day-to-day business of the principal work? Not asking us to hire because we don't have certainly the budget to hire a principal, but we need to be creative in other ways to be able to help support me to focus on the priority of getting us financially stable. And it's going to be, well, he's going to show you the interim. When we look at the interim, I don't think it's as huge a deal because honestly, if we raised $1 million, we're out of the hole. If I got a funder that came in and said, here's a check for 500,000, we're going to be out of the hole. So that's really what it comes down to is the external.
We've already brought the value proposition here. Now we're just catching up on how the state pays for that with enrollment.
Right.
And so this is really nice. What other comments on this as we get ready to then look at are you taking us to a cash flow, which is the interim budget? Is that right? After this July? Yeah, that'll kind of tell it month by month. So are we ready to move on to that?
I just have one comment here, Delano, on that. This is going to our authorizer, right? And the only thing I would add here is there on the third paragraph there, where you're giving the history, a little bit of background of Edson. Just trying to make that as positive as possible. I think when you talk about the new leadership for the year, add that, big immediate changes, to the school, that kind of thing that, foresaw the situation and immediately make changes to the situation so that, improve the school, right? I don't want to say it's all negative in here, but there's a lot of negativity in here in the stabilization plan. So anything we can add to make it you took immediate action to, stabilize the school, based on the reduction of students. Just to put a positive, something positive in that. And along with what you were saying, Brett, does it have to be a stabilization plan? Can it just be our strategic plan? Can you call it our strategic plan, or are you, because that again makes it more positive, right?
Internally, we can call it that, but
Yeah.
Specific to the
just because that was a request.
Yeah, because this was a request, and so I won't be able to make changes if the board is voting, because what I presented, and again, this is what we can do, to your point, Felipe, is incorporate what you're saying in another iteration of it, because this one, as stated, is what I'm asking the board to approve.
I think what we motioned, we could move to add that sentence in,
right,
and approve that, and then you can add the sentence that the under the leadership of the new executive director, the board recognizes
And if someone can send me that blurb in an email, just so I won't
We're happy to do that for you.
forget to incorporate that when I
Right, because
send these
I
on.
think that has a significant value. What Dr. Dean did, that particular part has a strong value that goes in here, and we're reaching for everything now, right?
Yeah, we would hope our authorizer would be as competent as this board is.
Right.
Based on
Right. We need to talk about action was being taken immediately. Action was being taken immediately here, and that's a big one. So I'd like to put that in there.
Good. We'll continue to talk. Let's go ahead and move on to the
Interim.
next report and the I want to call it pro forma, but it's really the interim budget.
Yes. All righty. So just
Do you let
quick
us know what it's titled in here? What's the title? I
yes, it is titled 2023-24 first interim financial report, I believe. Mary Beth, could you provide a little assistance there? I may be shaky on
Yep,
the exact
you're right.
wording.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, perfect.
2023-24 first interim report.
Yes. So this is a report you guys have seen before in prior years, right? The format is still the same. This year, what I'm going to do is just sort of take you, we've already seen the numbers. You guys have seen that, right? And where the loss is. What I'm going to show you is we're just going to take a look quickly at the fund balance area, because this is where the question comes about solvency and related to the fiscal stabilization plan, which is, hey, when do we get back to positive and what does that look like? So let me share this really quickly and then we can have a better idea here. So we've already talked about the net loss for the year through October, which is what you're seeing here. Excuse me here. So scroll up a little bit. And the reason why I don't like to open this document is because it is not easy on the eyes, right? That's our loss through October, that number there. And I can't highlight anything because this is a report that the this is the authorizer's template, and I can't make any changes or highlight anything here. So 933, and then you guys have already seen that on the October financials. Here's where what I'd like to discuss, right? So this is where we ended or began, right, the year, right? We began the year with a deficit fund balance of 823,000, right? Based on this currently, if you add that deficit together, if you add these two numbers together, you're going to get that 1.756, which is currently where we are in terms of the fund balance, right? And that's your assets minus all of our liabilities, right? So this is currently where we are. Based on the interim budget, which is now that new revised budget, we're attempting to cut this in half, right? Because if you add back in the net income that we're going to have, that you will see here in the budget for next, for this year, you'll see that we're gonna try to reduce this deficit exponentially. Some of it this year, some of it next year, right? One of the things I do want to point out on the balance sheet, though, is this here, right? So this is the net of, what we owe charter schools capital plus the revolving loan. So if you look at it, this is really our biggest liability, right? Overall, right? We get rid of this, this helps our position long term, right? But we can't, because there's a plan that has to come to fruition in time, right? So our plan, and then having the time to make that come to fruition, as we know, will get us where we need to go. Let's talk about what it looks like in the future, right? So you guys have already seen the budget. This is the column here that I'm going to ask you guys to approve, that revised budget. But here's where we get back to positive, right? So let's get down there just to see where the rubber meets the road. As I mentioned, we're projecting that we're going to end this year with a deficit, the fund balance deficit of 664,000, right? Call it 650,000 because it's taken into account your restricted net position, right? We're going to add back in 172,000 in net income, right? Next year, in the out year, if we look at this budget, and just to kind of see here where we are in terms of net income, right? Because these are the two out year budgets for the fiscal stabilization plan. Net income over those next 2 years will be this, right? We're looking at roughly a 688,000 in net income in 24-25, and then about 1.4 million. And this is a result of us freezing certain expenditures that I talked about in the fiscal stabilization plan, right? So we're freezing salaries and benefits for those 2 years, in a sense, to make sure that we can at least have time to strategically look at those things and say, hey, do we continue with that to get us out of this hole? And then we can start to look at what we can do in terms of adding to or increasing salaries and benefits for staff 2 years down the road. But at some point, that becomes part of the equation if we do not get any more revenues. But as you can see here, our revenues will be based off of, you know, the incremental growth in student increase year over year. Right. Spending, as I mentioned, we forecasted based upon what you know, current year numbers are historically, and then obviously carrying that forward based upon just the incremental increase in student numbers from 23-24 to 24-25, 25 to 26. Right. The short answer is, hey, Delano, when do we get out of this? And you can see that happens here. This happens at the end of 25, right? We go from a deficit fund balance of 650,000 to 37,000 to begin 25-26. And then from 25-26, that's when we'll have that huge jump back to solvency. So if we stay within these numbers and if we do everything possible and have these things come to fruition, and obviously this is reading the tea leaves into the future, right? And these things come into fruition as they're laid out on paper. And you know, there's some degree of you know, plus minus error here in terms of, you know, can all of these things happen? Will you meet that enrollment? Will we have those revenues? What's going to happen with the economy a year from now, 2 years from now? But overall, the short answer to the question that the district wanted to know, or the authorizers wanted to know, is when do we get back to solvency? And that's in the end of 24-25 school year. I will show you a cash flow related to this year. And again, this is what we're up against month over month, right? You know, sort of look at this here in terms of what revenues are coming in versus your expenditures going out the door, right? You know, and you can see here just, you know, our expenditures overall. If I were to look at what we're averaging year over year, month over month, you know, we're averaging about 450,000 a month in expenses, right? But our revenues are 419,000. So just, you know, on average month over month, you know, there's a $30,000 deficit that we have to meet each month, right? And that's when borrowing comes into fruition. What you're seeing down here and just at the bottom, I'll show you, you know, these are our cash, ending cash balances month over month. Obviously taking into consideration borrowing and repayment back. And to your point, Brent, you know, this is what you're seeing here reflected here, the borrowing and the repayment of those things month over month for charter schools capital to get us through the month, right? So this is a year of tightening our belt. This is a year of, you know, the sort of weathering the storm that we're currently in, right? And then as we get out of this year and into next year, the outlook is much clearer. It's better because we won't have, you know, all of those things that were working against us, the lower enrollment, the unforeseen events that caused us to burn through cash and things like that. And not just this year, but in the prior year, right? So those things are completely gone. We get back to solvency in 24-25, and then we're on much smoother pavement in terms of having more resources to meet our obligations and our commitments. Here really quick, yes.
If you're ready for questions or comments, thank you for taking us through the detail on this one. And is this the report that then accompanies our stabilization plan and goes to the authorizer?
Yes, absolutely. So we've essentially killed 2 or 3 birds with one stone here. The interim report, the fiscal stabilization plan, and the budget for that is all encompassed in this document that I just showed you, because those 2 out years is really where the district, your authorizer, excuse me, want to see, hey, when do we get this thing back on track? When does this organization get back to meeting, you know, just the requirements of and I'll show you what I mean here in just a second. I'm at a loss for words. I'm talking too much. Meeting our reserves, right? So because that's one of the things, you know, and that reserve threshold is 3% of expenses or $50,000, whichever is less. So it's not a huge mark to reach. We just have to be able to get ourselves out of the red and back to that, and then we are good to go in terms of meeting those requirements that are laid out by the authorizer.
The insight, experience, attention to detail for you and Dr. Bean is much appreciated. And when you put it into a beautiful, complex spreadsheet like this, gives me a great sense of confidence. What's here is actually what's happening and what will happen. So thoughts or questions on this interim financial report and or budget? Talk through those.
Hi, Delano, thank you for running through that. One question that's hard for me to track here on the expense side. I see the assumptions based on the enrollment increases, but in terms of the facility rent,
Mhm.
does that assume this site, or that's assuming we're in another site at
It's
around the
assuming,
same rent rate?
assuming this site only.
Can we
Because
house or can we support at 472, 429, 472?
I believe that there would be,
Yeah, we're in the middle, on Tuesday, I have a negotiating meeting with them, trying to get at more classrooms. If we got those 4 classrooms back, yes, we could house that many students, because right now we're housing 372 students minus those 4 classrooms and then the 5th area here. So that's 5 spaces we could put students, average of 30 per classroom is 150 students. So, and we could, the lease cost would go up, obviously, with increased enrollment.
Yeah, but the dollar, or it's very, very economical. Right? I'm
Yeah,
just-
it's very
if we
economical
had
to
to
get.
get another site, you know,
Yeah.
our lease rate is quite different.
Yeah, it'd be very economical here. They did approve us at 311 ADA for in-district students. So we add on top of that about 30% more. So on my meeting with them on Tuesday, I'm going to ask for those classrooms back to meet the needs of our ADA. And if
And
they
if I
can't
could-
put it there, then go ahead. Delano.
because if I could add one thing, the more in-district students you have, obviously the less in terms of additional space that they will charge you for, because they're obligated to serve their students first in terms of space. And I believe historically that school site, and someone can correct me on this, I believe at one point in time that school site had over 600 students housed there when it was a district school. When the district had its facilities there, I believe it was over 600 students that were served at that site. So we do know that there's room there, and I believe, Dr. Bean, correct me if I'm wrong, the district does have a few rooms that it's using as storage or some other thing.
Well, they're using many rooms for operating a very small virtual academy. And so I think they're gonna need to outweigh whether they can afford to keep, that particular program here.
Other thoughts or questions?
No, so just in summary, I mean, it's really about freezing expenditures like salary for a year, freezing any more curriculum expenditures this year, which we will freeze. It's about finding outside revenue, funders, grants, things like that I'll need support on for sure. And it's just continuing to keep our enrollment high and then increase it for next year. If we do all those factors, we'll be out of this at the end of the next school year. And I think we can do that. Next year in terms of staffing, even if we increase, I think we still have enough staff here to support the increase in numbers. Maybe an additional teacher, but not as many teachers as we needed to go from last year to this year. From last year to this year, we need a lot of teachers because we went from 211 ADA to 358 ADA, which is a significant increase. Next year, we won't have to have as many new employees. But one thing we want to keep in mind too is the expenditures that we incur that other schools do not is running a dual immersion where we have to have this, Mandarin/English component. So it's an additional teacher for each almost grade span, almost grade level. And then the expectation of our stakeholders that we have teachers' aides in their classroom. Those things other schools do not have. One thing I want to consider us talk about is I think we need to redo the way we use our TAs where not every teacher gets one, but we just have a handful of TAs that supports the program. Many of our teachers are comfortable with their TAs, but they need to learn that teachers don't have TAs full time in their classroom. So those are the biggest expenditures, really. The dual immersion component, extra teachers, the TAs. And so we really want to educate our parent stakeholders and family stakeholders. If you want that quality, then you need to support our school. And that's kind of the way I want to present it.
Are you communicating with the staff? I mean, because you are, but about these challenges, about what we're proposing here in terms of holding.
No, not yet, because I did present to the staff certainly how revenue flows into the school.
Yeah.
So they understand we're really tight right now. So they understand they're not going to ask for a new curriculum and things like that. I have not even broached the topic of salary freeze because the board still needs to decide on in the future, right? Board meetings for the next school year. So I'm not going to, I will bring it into a discussion and see and get their feedback. I already know what their feedback will be, right? Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, so sometime probably in January, February, we'll have that conversation.
With this, we get just another opportunity as we move to this section of approving under our action items. Any last thoughts? I'm going to ask Alana to stick around just in case. But I think we could move on from these reports to our consent agenda item, Roman numeral 4, and then we'll take actions on 5 on what we've just heard. And on Roman numeral 4, the only consent item is approval of the November 14th board meeting minutes. I'll move that we approve those. Is there a second? Any changes or discussion about those? I think so. If you were not present, really no reason to vote on approving that. But let's go ahead and do a roll call vote then, just going from my left to right. Molly?
Yes.
And on approval, yes. Doug. Miller, I think you were dialed in. Mary Beth, was Miller part of that meeting on November?
Yes.
Yeah, he was. Miller was, you approve of the meeting minutes?
He's not there.
He's not.
He's not, okay, we'll pass.
And by the way, I don't think he was.
Oh, okay, I didn't think so.
He was listening, but he wasn't allowed to.
And then going to.
He was in the.
he was
Right,
in the-
exactly.
A little bit of it, right? Yeah, and then Felipe? Okay. So we have our minutes approved and now our discussion items. If I could I do them in reverse order because they're fresher this way? If we started with letter E, we were presented.
Well, I caution against that because that was to be done in the beginning of the meeting, is to change the order
Yeah, I know.
of the items. And
We'll do them in sequence then, here. Thank you, Dr. B.
that's okay.
Otherwise, we'd be re-voting on it.
Yeah.
Just perfunctory. You know? Oh,
That's why we keep it.
yes.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm so appreciative. The first then is the board will consider for approval the Larry and Helen Hogue Foundation grant. I'll say something briefly. The administrators of this grant seem to have a heart for education. We've often been the beneficiary of that, and it always has either enhanced and improved our school or paved the way for something next for us. We just heard that every dollar we spend is accounted for with the priority of the classroom. And yet we have to plan for the future. Sometimes that takes expenditures. And so we've always been grateful when just at the moment where we have something next to occur. Maybe it's technology coming into the classroom. Maybe it's here some seed money for the future. But Dr. Dean, would you give any reflection on that? And then love to hear even from Brett a little bit on what he would add to this commentary.
Yeah, I mean, you did a great job just setting up the stage in terms of how faithful the Larry and Helen Pogue Foundation has been to our school, and just how remarkable their support has been. So we really truly appreciate them. When I spoke with Brett, who proposed the idea, we talked a lot about what will help us not only, you just heard a plan on how we're going to get out of the financial hole, and we'll be out of the hole end of next school year. But one of the ways is to grow our school and grow in the revenue. And to do that, we already talked about opening up other schools. In order to research and develop and set that stage to open up other schools, there's a lot of costs like administrative, legal, market analysis, right? Recruiting, and all those kinds of external supports in order to do that. And that's what this particular grant is about, is really to help fund and support the startup of potentially a second school. And we're going to go after San Juan Capistrano, Spanish dual immersion. And so this money will really support in that process and help our organization to grow, because the more students we have, of course, the more we can expand and really carry the vision forward across Orange County. So that's what this particular grant is about. And we want to present it to the board and publicly just say thank you for the generosity of the Larry and Helen Pogue Foundation, and that we couldn't do the work that we do without supporters like them. So Brett was a big part of bringing that here. So I want to recognize and honor Brett as well. Thank you, Brett.
I think we echo that. For any participating in the meeting now or later, there's a letter that accompanies this, and it's available for all. And you summarized beautifully the purpose of the grant. Anything you'd add, Brett, on this topic?
Yeah, the only thing I would say, and definitely a big thank you to Larry and Helen Foundation for continuing to support these efforts here, is that the purpose of the grant money is to not take away from any of the day-to-day activities here, but really every dollar that is generated here at the school is reinvested in the school. And so these funds are really there to help go beyond.
Yeah.
And so that's wanted to make sure that it's delineated for that, because we don't want anything. We know we're in a process of getting out of a hole. We don't want to focus on what's next if we're still in a hole. So, we have the bandwidth to do other things, and hopefully these resources will help us do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other board discussion on the?
We're going to definitely send a letter, but we're also going to recognize them in our launch. We're actually researching right now, like the $1 million wall, and so they'll certainly get a plaque on that. Definitely a recognition, public recognition of that.
Yeah, anything you want to do, take pictures, specifically for foundation, we take pictures that we can present at the board meeting. I think it would be nice just to show things that are happening here, they're planning, just a write-up and with some photos. It'd be nice to share with all the board members.
I like that.
It's really nice, because then they see in living color the effect on children and the education process. I would add one other thing too, is a invitation to, if we can invite people from the public into our Christmas program. If that's acceptable, I think that's a nice invite too. And go, wow, this is what's been happening.
Brett, is it possible at the next board meeting for the foundation for us to bring some students to perform or something like that?
Yeah, so if you have an idea you'd like to present, you can definitely get some comments, see if they're interested, and we can arrange that. Either a formal invitation to have them come here or to go to the.
That'd be wonderful. Have they ever seen our video, our school video?
No.
Because we could show that to them as well.
Keep this fresh in my mind.
Absolutely.
Then I'll entertain a motion that the board approve and accept the Larry and Helen Pogue Foundation along with great thanks. Someone like to move? Oh, Molly moves and,
I'll second.
and Felipe will second. Let's go ahead and start left to right. Molly?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Brett, will you abstain on this one?
Abstain.
Okay, and then Felipe? Approved. We have majority, and then one last chance for Miller. I'm not sure if he's connected at the moment. We'll just show the three then approving with the majority. Okay, great. A complete. Going on to item B, the board is to consider and approve the MOU with the Chong Queen Secondary School. I think everybody's seen the outlined memo of understanding. It's well written. It looks like it's mutually beneficial. Dr. Bean, anything else? We were aware of this, but anything else you'd add?
Yeah, I think last board meeting, you guys approved it. And so this is just the formal MOU. And then at next board meeting, we're gonna have a formal signing, both their school and our school. Hopefully it'll be at a board meeting. Yeah, right? Oh, it's not anymore? Oh, it'll be informal, but we're gonna have board members present. 2 members. Okay, so it's not a board meeting, but we'll invite 2 board members to this meeting with them where we sign together and get to meet each other.
Well,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
Will that be in January?
December 19th.
Oh, no, it is
December.
Oh, so now it's back to December 19th. All right, couple weeks.
If it's a Zoom meeting that can
It's
be
a Zoom
recorded, wouldn't that be very nice?
Yep.
Okay, well, my manfred's still rusty, so I'll nominate 1 or 2 other board members who feel confident.
Love for Molly to be there, Felipe, Brett, anybody. Well, actually not anybody, just 2, just 2. Yeah.
That sounds good. Well, this is really nice then. Would someone like to move that we approve the MOU with Chong Queen? Second question. Oh, yeah.
So, you guys have briefing, that's the last.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Just
yeah.
a question, because I know it's Cambodia. We all are aware of it. I didn't expect that when I saw the MOU.
The what?
Reference to Cambodia.
I don't think I referenced that. So what is the concern with that? We can have them strike that out.
Well, I just want to make sure we're all aware. I just didn't know what that was.
Yeah, I'm looking at the MOU.
See the wrong thing.
Possibly, I don't know what reference to Cambodia. What we did do though, last month, we made sure that this school is not affiliated with Dr. Ken Williams' concerns. He had past board resolution with OCDE that it's not affiliated with the the Buddhist or the Confucius
Yeah.
Institute.
So
Right,
the,
right. So this is not.
Yeah, it mentions agree to work towards a strategic cooperation in the field of new class setup in Cambodia.
Oh, we still have to. Yeah, this has to be rewritten.
Oh,
This is just the template.
yes, this is the real one, but since they use the same MOU with all the others, I think they forgot to take that out. So we need to have you guys approve it with us striking that out and correcting that. We won't sign this anyways until December 19th. So that's a good catch.
What actually is it everything else, the curriculum sharing, the exchange?
Yeah, that Cambodia thing needs to be
Yeah,
fixed.
we'll fix
Yeah,
it.
everything else is just mainly sharing of ideas, pen paling, with the goal in mind that our 8th graders would eventually be able to go to the school, right? Exchange and visit the school. Yeah, absolutely. Whoever else wants to go.
Chaperones, the location of the school, where is the actual location?
It's in Chongqing. Chongqing. It's in the middle of
The
Chongqing.
just center.
Mhm.
One of the provinces. Okay. My geography is limited. I think I could identify 3 major areas. Good.
Yeah,
okay.
we need to strike that sentence, okay?
Always. Okay, yeah. Because I was a tourist, I didn't get to go there.
Then I will make a motion that we accept the MOU with the change of that.
Yeah.
Revision of that Cambodia
Reference.
reference.
Yes, we'll have them strike that out.
Mhm.
Motion to approve with that change.
Second? I'll second. Okay, I beat you to it, just like going left to right then, Molly,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, and Brett. Yep. And
Yes.
Okay, great. And we have an MOU in place, and that'll be fun. Letter C, the board will consider for approval the 2023-2024 revised budget that was presented by Delano. Any further discussion on that? I'll move that we approve that. And a second.
Second.
Thank you, Felipe. And going left to right again, Molly.
Yes.
And Susan's a yes. Brett? Right. And also Felipe.
Yes.
Wonderful. Then D, board to consider and approve the 2023-2024 first interim financial report. I think we discussed that pretty well, but just any other further discussion? We're good. I'll move that we approve them. The interim financial report is presented by Delano. Second, please. Okay, Brett got it, but you were very close, Molly. We'll start with you on vote.
Yes.
I'm a yes, and Brett, I and Felipe.
Yes.
Okay. And lastly, E, we were presented with, so we'll consider for approval the fiscal stabilization plan. And I think, was there an edit that we suggested on there? I think I could almost quote what you were saying, but let me see if I can.
Go ahead.
I'll see if I can get it in the record that we would have added to that the board has expressed its confidence since beginning with the leadership of Dr. Bean, our executive director. Something to that effect. I don't know if you're, see if you could wordsmith that at all for our record. Is that kind of what we want?
That would be suffice.
Okay, if you could wordsmith that for us a little bit, that concept, the board expresses its confidence with the leadership of Dr. Bean as our executive director. So that is really where we're sitting today, and
Yeah,
that's great.
fine.
Okay, I'll ask for then a motion with that change to accept the approve the fiscal stabilization plan.
Second.
Wow, you guys are right on it. Going left to right, Molly.
Yes.
And Susan's a yes. Brett.
Aye.
And Felipe.
Yes.
Wonderful. That takes us through our action items. Gives us a moment just for any comments, affirmations, or recommendations for our executive director. Provided for everyone also is future board meetings and dates. Let's just do a little round robin. Molly, anything you'd share with our executive director?
Yes. Dr. Bean, thank you for your report, especially about at the end of the school, this year. And I do see your team, the teachers work in unity, work in harmony. And that is just a wonderful thing to hear about a school. The school's supposed to be like a family, right? We support each other, we learn from each other. And I do see that that's what this school is going on right now. So thank you. And I especially thank PTO. It's like they're so generous and they support and they know the needs of the teachers and school family. And I also thank the music teacher. I think it's one of the reasons that make our school different than the other public school. And I know it's a lot of hard work. It's not easy to work with kids with music, but they're doing that. So I can't wait till next Thursday to see the celebration. And I also like to thank all the staff, with that, especially when we mentioned about other school coming to visit and see how the teachers work together. I mean, it's very difficult. You all came in with different background, different culture, but the truth is we all have one goal, is to educate kids. And I see that with your leadership. Thank you. And I do believe it. We're on the right path. Things will just get better.
Yeah.
So I look forward to that. And I also want to thank Delano. I didn't ask a lot of questions because I'm always in the learning mode when we talk about finance. But I thank my friends over here on the board. I'm learning a lot. So hopefully in the future, I'll know how to ask questions. But I do learn a lot. I mean, being a teacher for so many years, I knew that is in there, but I never really know that part is so important. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity that I can learn that as well. Delano, you're so thorough. I mean, it just, and I'm just so grateful. I can see that how much time you put in there. This is your family too. So appreciate that you take this seriously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Continuing in round robin, is it time to go over to the other end of the board?
I'm ready. So Delano, I just following up with Molly saying there, it's a beautiful day here in Southern Cal where we are. Nice, beautiful day. And I was really happy right up until you started talking about the budget. And all this. Now I'm depressed. I can't wait to get back outside and have a little sunshine. Okay.
My apologies.
Appreciate your hard work.
I feel like the Grim Reaper at times with this.
Okay, I do. And I just wanted to let you know. The other thing is, I know it's only been a couple of weeks since we last met. Of course, a lot of positive things going on. If you did notice the decoration for the holiday, the PTO team came in and, did all this, weeks the day after Thanksgiving, I can't remember. And just not to toot my own horn, but the tree that's in the teacher's lounge, that's me.
Oh, I didn't
Okay,
know
so
that.
I did that, the Christmas tree thing, and that was mostly me. Okay. Also, I do spend a lot of time here, and real quick, I like to take pictures of the kids. I don't know if you can see this little beauty right here. They come dressed in their holiday outfit.
Yeah.
And that really caught my eye. But then later I caught her. She had like this little, I don't know if you can see the little doll she has. The little elf with the shell on her back. She had that on her back while she's walking around. Yeah, that was so cute. I don't think this is your daughter. No, it's not her. But the kids come dressed very cute for the holidays, puts things in a real nice mood. And of course, I catch the kids reading at the lunchtime with books that they took out from the library. So, and several of them. Here's another one, different set of kids. And then there's another one here. This was yesterday, as a matter of fact. Another set of kids. They're eating their lunch, reading the books from the library. So before you, of course, I encourage a quick look in there. There have been some changes since the last time we were here. A lot of things going on there. Okay.
Talk to them, tell them about the spelling bee.
Oh, spelling bee. Oh my, it was incredible. Very, with I would say very professional for the first time, right? The first time it happening, and how serious all the kids were, the competition and everything. And boy, we got a lot of smart kids. At the end there, I was spelling the words wrong, and they were getting them right. I was like, I was thinking when they completed their spelling, I thought, oh, the kid's wrong. He spelled it wrong, right? And then he's correct. And I'm like, oh no, I'm the one who got it wrong. Some of those words were really, really tough. And I think it was Aiton, he was third place, right? So he fell out third place. Boy, I never seen a kid so happy to fail. I mean, it was so cool. He was just smiling. He just tried his best. But it didn't work out, but he still made the team, right? He still, because he was third place. But he was just, it didn't bother him at all. He's going to just move on to his next whatever. Right?
So we have 3 going to the county. Why?
Yeah. And the support from the kids that were here and the parents and everything. Yeah, it was great. It was actually, I knew that was happening, but I forgot what day when I came in to pick up my kids. I was fortunate enough to see it, and I stayed because it was really well done. It was really professional. I liked everything about it. Yeah. Again, it just reflects the value of the school, the parents, and any future students and parents that would come. Yeah, it was very, very. I think that's it. That's it.
You can always jump back in if you remember.
Yeah,
anything else.
I do remember some. So when you need help with raising that million, let's do it. Good. I'm your man.
You ready to start planning the gala?
I will tell you, we already started.
Oh, great. Love it.
We already started. All right. What I'm kind of thinking is after the winter break, right? We start there because they're really focused. PTO is really focused on the winter thing. Hopefully, most of you will be able to attend and see. there's a lot going on here.
Yep.
After that, we'll start. So.
So a special thank you to all the volunteers, those that support the school here and the staff. Just really a wonderful place to be. And a special thank you to those that are involved in the book fair happening next week, and the library and all the activities that have been undergone. I love the incorporation of the spelling bee and the piano playing, that the science fair looked like it's coming. I mean, really building these things into a school that was just focused on getting, basic education, but you're really building on it, providing a lot of value add. It's really great to see the music teacher involved, reaching out, and the orchestra, the basketball competition, all of that. It's just wonderful to see. So thank you.
I would just add ditto along the way on all of those. Just a curiosity, if possible. I wonder if the winter program that's presented, I'm wondering if it could be live streamed to a Facebook page, either our parent page or something. It's an after school event. That would certainly be neat. And it lives then on that Facebook page for a little while. Second, I'll offer this. Delano might perk his ears up. There's one category of revenue we didn't receive this year, and we might be available to us in future years, and we would start investigating in about February, called E-rate. All of us who have cell phones pay a little tax, and the tax is set aside for public schools to buy primarily networking equipment. We know most of that's provided by the district, but there might be some angle there. And I have a person that we train on that and identify any equipment that's in our purchase plan that would qualify for E-rate and do the paperwork for us. So that's just a commitment I'll make. And Delano's going north and south, and so I'll do that. And my last one is just an idea, and it's so funny because it's a year away. But just tuck it away, just, mentally put it in your back pocket. On Giving Tuesday, which is the first Tuesday after Thanksgiving, people sometimes give out of different pockets. Sometimes the personal pocket, sometimes the business pocket, sometimes the Giving Tuesday after Thanksgiving pocket. Our school, in another environment, raised about $75,000 for camp experiences. If there's some experience or academic endeavor that matches well, we might be able to package that up effortlessly and just see it happen. So just tuck that one away, and we'll see what happens next year for us on Giving Tuesday. We certainly are able to receive in that. But other than that, just great thanks and praise for the entire staff and the environment that exists here. It's truly a privilege just to be a small part of it. So wonderful. With that, then I'll invite a motion to adjourn our meeting today. Oh,
I
good.
make a motion, we adjourn the meeting.
Okay, in this case, Felipe got the motion and Brett got the second. And as tradition has it, I'll start on my left, Molly.
Yes.
And I'm yes on adjournment. Brett, aye, and Felipe.
Yes.
And so we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Thank you again, Delano, our executive director, and Mary Beth.
Thanks, Delano.
Thank you, folks.
Bye, Delano. Thank
Okay,
you.
bye-bye. See you guys next week.